Everybody knows the Power BI superstars, but there are many more amongst us who are fighting the same fight to bring about the Power BI revolution. This series is to showcase these people of Power BI. Hello, I am here today with Greg Tysall, a finance professional and a Power BI enthusiast, all the way from Bristol, United Kingdom. Greg has worked at the Ministry of Defense, Axe Wealth, and a host of other companies, and at present is looking for his next big opportunity where he can combine his strengths in finance and Power BI. Welcome, Greg. Did I get all that right?
That's right, Avi. Yeah, I've been working in finance now and accounting for quite a few years, using predominantly Excel and various other sort of MI packages, and came across Power BI recently, as I'm sure most people have, and it's absolutely awesome. I mean, there's just so much going on. It's basically a dream come true, really. I mean, you're able to create visualizations now that I only dreamed of when I first discovered Excel, and it's all just at a click of a button.
Yeah.
But like I said, there is a lot going on, you know, with the DAX and the M language, etc. And it can seem quite daunting, but you know, you're only limited by your own imagination, I would say.
Yeah, love it. So I was going back through our notes, and in one of the first emails that you had sent me, you had used this term, data will soon be the currency of the future. And I loved it so much. And so you kind of see that. Why do you think it's so transformative? I mean, has this technology not been around before? Is this packaged differently? What's different about it this time?
I think it's a lot more accessible. It's a lot more fun to use. Excel, you're sort of looking at, you know, you're limited straight away by the amount of data that you can use. You're forced into using very slow-moving array formulas or VLOOKUPs and just expanding the size of your workbook to purposes where you can't actually do anything with it. You can't really email it. I mean, you can upload it to SharePoint, for instance. That's one way of sharing it, the workaround, for instance, if you like.
Yeah.
But it's just very accessible, and it's actually a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's right. And why shouldn't it be fun? So I often talk about that, where a lot of us, myself included, started off loving this stuff. You know, so Excel is a great tool unless you start hitting the boundaries, the rough edges. And you start loving this stuff, but then it kind of becomes a chore. And I think in a way, Power BI lets you rediscover that love, or at least that's what happened with me.
Yeah, I think that about sums it up. Yeah, it's falling back in love with something that you thought you were never gonna reach without the use of extensive formulas and macros and a lot of work
or a different level of learning. I mean, I would look somewhat enviously to my proper BI folks, right? I could never call myself a BI person, right? I was an analyst, and I would look at them and they would have these heavy-hitting tools, SSIS, SSRS, which I did use somewhat, and other tools. But yeah, I mean, what you talked about, it wasn't that learnable, it wasn't that accessible, and now it is. And it almost feels like to an Excel user, I mean, Excel was a fun tool, it's still a great tool, and I love combining Excel with Power BI, but it just feels like that playground just got a whole lot bigger, right? I mean, does that give you that feeling?
Yeah, it does, yeah, very much so. And I think it's got a lot to do with the actual Power BI community as well. Everybody's sharing a lot of the information, and there seems to be, you know, nobody's really willing to go out on a limb and say, this is the way you do this. It seems to be that everybody's sort of learning a lot and sharing that information, and it's a great community to be part of.
That's true. It's very vibrant, and I'm excited for that. So I'll ask you something else, and I've felt this through my career in kind of BI, business analytics, Power BI, even before that, that it's a bit of art and science. It's very tech heavy, but it's still about kind of people, storytelling, kind of those soft skills. Have you experienced that in your career, and especially with the new, Power BI? Is that still true? Is it still art+science, people plus tech?
Yeah, I think you're right there to a certain extent. It's definitely, I mean, it's always going to be a medium of communication, and the way you communicate that is going to be it's going to be honed in on the audience that you're trying to communicate a message to. So that element of storytelling is there. And I think the creative side of it comes in where you're thinking about, how do I express myself here? How do I express these opinions in a way, this data in a way that's going to grab my audience's attention, draw them in, and make the best impact, really.
So that's great. That's great. Love it. But of course, you almost seem to have an edge, and I feel that's what's different in the new world. That the more varied your background is, it brings that edge to you. So you have lived in South Africa, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, my parents.
You have played jazz in bands. You've studied jazz and plays jazz. So, gosh, tell me more about that.
Well, basically when I left school in South Africa, I didn't really know what I wanted to do at that point. I'd thought about becoming a pharmacist. I thought about becoming a sound engineer. That's where I was heading. Music had played a big influence in my life. So I went for an audition, passed the audition to study music, and just basically got involved with things that way. The course was heavily leaning towards jazz, which I was absolutely thrilled by. And and I mean, jazz has, there's a bit of improvisation involved in jazz. So that kind of helped being a little bit creative in creating workbooks and spreadsheets a bit further down the line, for instance.
Oh boy.
Also, the element of practice as well. And going back to something you said when I first started the course was, don't always think that you're not going to be able to do this. Just think you're not going to be able to do it right now.
Yeah.
And that kind of element that comes out of jazz music and practicing really just sort of propels you forward. It makes you very resilient, and just the discipline of practice, and practice makes perfect.
Love it. And you know what? I am willing to claim that I don't even think that you realize that how much of that helps you in how many different ways. But I can kind of see it. And one thing that I also talk about kind of in my class and all my students is that Power BI, when you get to the next level, it's not about, if I can solve this problem or not. You can always solve it, but it becomes a challenge of, I have 3 different ways of solving it, and being able to balance and being able to weigh the trade-offs and which one do I choose. So it is that art and science, and I think a little bit of a different edge. Like you have music, somebody can bring something else in there. I think that's what elevates your game to the next level. So yeah, I mean, you certainly have that edge there. That's terrific. So hey, Power BI, I have to ask you, what's your favorite feature, trick, thing there which you love right now, or maybe the first time you discovered it kind of blew you away? Yeah, just share that with us.
I think what I'm getting a big kick out of at the moment is the forecasting and the creative ways that I've seen that you can go about that. Just by simple tricks, and just by an approach like bringing in a measure and basing your forecast on last year's sales, increasing them, say, by a percentage mark, but also having the ability to retire certain retire certain products or product lines out of your calculation, and just being able to project that forward.
So that's really cool, and it ties so perfectly with the point that I was just making, which is more than one way to do things. So there's forecasting, which kind of how you talked about. There's forecasting built into some of the graphs in Power BI. There's forecasting you can do using our visuals, but I'll come back to the approach you're talking about, and I love that. So that's essentially kind of a what-if analysis you build using measures, but
That's
you give
correct.
yourself the full capability that, hey, I want to tweak it this way. I want to change this assumption to this. Whatever you want to throw it in. The foreign exchange rate is going to change this way. The growth percentage is going to change this way. The product catalog, maybe we're going to discontinue these products. So, yeah, I mean, gosh, I can kind of see that dashboard, and that would be so cool for any company to have, right?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, perfect. So great. I'll ask you one more question. Well, if you could go back to your former self, I don't know, when you were starting out in your career, what advice would you have for that person?
Whoa, that's a difficult one. I don't know. I don't think there'd be much advice there. I've had a varied background, like you pointed out. I've experienced a lot of things, but I think they've all sort of, well, I'm pretty sure they've all contributed to making me the person that I am. I'm a very inquisitive person. I'm curious. I love new technology.
Boy.
So I think there'd be very few things that I would change. Perhaps getting on board with Power Pivot when it first came out in 2010 would have been a good idea, but I mean, I had other commitments at the time. I was finishing off my accountancy studies, for instance, so I had to sort of prioritize it there. I knew Power Pivot wasn't going away. I knew something as good as this was not going to evaporate into thin air. I just didn't have the time that I would have liked to dedicate to it.
Okay, terrific. When you were starting to, I felt like just reaching out and giving you a hug, because I'm kind of in the same camp. I think I would like to change everything, all the good and bad. I think it adds up. Of course, when I look back, I feel like I should have enjoyed the journey, and that's what I focus on right now. That there are good times and bad times.
Yeah.
And you run into different things. Sometimes you struggle. Sometimes you feel ecstatic, right? All that happens. But as long as we focus on kind of enjoying the journey. All right, terrific. So yeah, that's kind of all the questions I had. Is there anything else you would like to share with the broader Power BI community on other folks who are on a Power BI journey similar to you?
I would say pretty much as we've concluded, really, enjoy the journey. It's certainly it can be a great learning curve to be on. Things are happening all of the time, and there's never going to be one standard way of solving your problem. And just work hard, keep focused, and just stay with it.
Yeah, I mean, indeed, we're all on a learning journey, right? And sometimes you look at somebody else and like, oh my gosh, they're so far ahead. But guess what? I mean, I've been doing this since pretty much 2009, and I'm still learning. So indeed, it's all about the journey. It's all about getting better every day. So terrific, Greg. I've seen that from you, kind of win the class, and all that I've heard from you about your career. So certainly you embody that spirit, and kudos to you for that. Well, thanks so much for hanging out with me again.
Thank you very much, Avi. It's been a pleasure.
All right, Nez. Hey, you know what I always say. Power on, my friend.
Power on, Avi.
Hey, keep watching more videos and keep learning Power BI. But if you did enjoy this video, I would love to hear from you. So leave a comment, like, subscribe, all the good stuff. Power on, my friends.